निवासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते.
Okay, now this story is about Kolkata Intellectuals, written by Sanyal in the year. When was this first published? This was first published in 2018. Okay, the story is called Intellectuals, a short story, insanely hilarious. This entire book is filled with hilarious, sarcastic stories about Delhi elite, Bombay elite, bureaucracy, and Kolkata elite. Okay, listen to this story. The yellow ambassador taxi rattled to a halt by the side of the street. It was hot, humid, and crowded with pedestrians, hawkers, and vehicles of all description. Stalls of second-hand books, their wares piled high, seemed to spill over from the footpath onto the road. Holly, a name of person, Holly looked around from inside the taxi and decided that it was the right place. She paid the driver without haggling, even though she was sure that she had been overcharged. Then she stepped into the sun and the noisy bustle. So, Bengalis know what place is being described here, okay? Let's see how many of you all can guess. Bored hawkers turned to look at her with curiosity. It was not that they were unused to seeing a white foreigner and walking down the street. A couple of them drifted through every week, but they were usually backpackers and occasionally exchange students, like wandering around trying to get the quote-unquote authentic experience as promised by their guidebooks. For some reason, they always looked scruffy and dressed in the peculiar loose cotton tie and dye that a certain class of backpackers believe makes them look like they have quote-unquote been out there. That's why they don't dress in their usual jeans and t-shirt, etc., which we feel like wearing all the time because it's so comfortable. But when foreigners arrive on Indian soil, they try to dress like hippies because they try to give off the vibe that they are not just another white guy. Even more inexplicably, some of them sported a checked Palestinian keffah wrapped around their neck like a scarf, entirely unsuitable for the humidity of a Bengali summer, as if the piece of cloth somehow signaled their solidarity with the sufferings of all of the third world. So, I'm wearing a Palestinian scarf here, therefore you see, dear Bengali commies, I am your friend. Holly, however, was dressed in a light business suit and her hair was neatly set. She gave the impression of a corporate professional. She scanned the decaying colonial-era buildings that hovered over the street and tried to guess which one housed the coffee house. Finally, she walked over to a tea stall owner and asked for directions. Okay, yeah. So guys, people, Sanjeev Sanyal is talking about College Street, Kolkata here. The place called College Street, which is where the famous Presidency University is. The entrance to the building was somewhat different from what Holly had expected. She had heard about how the coffee house was the intellectual epicenter of the city, but the stairwell she now found herself in was crumbling and was half blocked by an old scooter and flanked on one side by a wall of exposed electrical wires, as it happens in old buildings. There were people going in and coming out, so Holly decided to take her chances and walk up the stairs. One floor up, she found herself in a large hall with a high ceiling. That is the main coffee house room, okay, where everyone hangs out. That is where that is the epicenter of atheism in Bengal. Rows of tables filled the hall even as hanging ceiling fans stirred the sultry air. There were many people sitting about drinking tea or coffee, chatting and arguing amid the tinkle of spoons, stirring sugar in ceramic cups, while an imposing portrait of the great poet, meaning Rabindranath Tagore, looked down at the scene from a peeling yellow wall. Okay, so the entire place is dilapidated, but there, the epicenter of intellectualism, that's where this discussion is going to take place. The place had clearly seen better days because, yeah, even all the legendary Bengalis used to come there to hang out. Satyajit Ray, Manna De, everyone. Manna De's famous song, Coffee House. Coffee House She Adda Taj or Nahi. Again, that was full of nostalgia, that we don't have hangouts at the coffee house anymore. That was the name of the song. Holly wondered how she would identify her contact person as she scanned the room. She had just arrived in the city the previous day and had only ever exchanged emails with him. Fortunately, someone waved to her from across the hall and walked up to her. Dr. Holly Katz. Yes, and I presume you are Biplab Mullik. Hope you did not have trouble finding coffee house. Everyone knows it. Biplab Mullik. Sanjeev Sanyal starts the story with trolling and more trolling and more trolling. So Biplab, as you know, means a revolution. So Holly replies, hope you did not have... Biplab Mullik replies, hope you did not have trouble finding coffee house. Everyone knows it. Holly replies, no problem at all. And thank you for arranging this meeting with your group of eminent intellectuals. Biplab Mullik says, best minds in the country, madam. We have been meeting here twice a week for the last 35 years. Real thinkers, not like the shallow fellows in Delhi arguing loudly on television every night. Biplab led Holly to a table where 5 others were sitting. 4 men and a woman in their 60s with graying hair. So all of them have become kind of old. All the men were in half-sleeved checked shirts, untucked and leather sandals. Remember this description. This is how a Bengali intellectual dresses if they are in their 60s and 70s. The lady was in a cotton sari with a fading brown and grey pattern, her oily hair tied tightly in a neat bun. On the table were several half-drunk cups of tea and coffee as well as books and newspapers in Bengali and English. Holly quickly surmised that the leader of the group was a man sitting directly under the portrait of the great poet. He does not mention it's Rabindranath Tagore, but obviously that's hinted here. While the others sat on cheap plastic chairs. So he is pointing out a hierarchy here, that the most important guy in the group sits in the good chair in front of Rabindranath Tagore, and everyone else around him is sitting on plastic chairs. Genius penmanship here. While the others sat on cheap plastic chairs, he sat on a large wooden one that had probably survived from the colonial era. A tall man with a pot belly that pushed against his loose shirt. He sat with an air of detached authority के आसपास ये natives क्या कर रहे हैं उससे मुझे कुछ आता जाता नहीं है. A confident smirk under his thick-framed glasses. Biplab Mullik is saying, let me introduce you first to Dr. Surojit Haldar. He used to teach post-colonial literature at DK College and writes regularly on important national and international matters. Just before you arrived, we were discussing his latest column on sports policy. He was very close to the previous chief minister, but the government changed. Otherwise, he would have been the head of the department. This intellectual, who teaches post-colonial literature, would have become the sports minister if the previous government had stayed. Listen to what Sanjeev Sanyal is insinuating here. Surojit nodded and smiled benevolently. Yes, that is the case. And this is Robin Shen. He makes documentaries and experimental art films. Very famous. Even won an international award in Prague in 1987. Robin corrected. It was Warsaw, 1986. Biplab went on undeterred. And this is Asad Ali, social worker and Marxist poet. He was also an MLA in the 90s but decided to leave active politics and work full-time for the uplift of the masses. He can tell you everything about grassroots. And Gayatri Di. He is calling this Bengali leftist intellectual Gayatri Di. This is of course trolling Gayatri Spivak. And Gayatri Di. She is a great scholar of economic geography. First class first and gold medalist in 1977. She has written a seminal paper on the cooperative movement in the brass utensils industry in East Midnapur district. Even Americans know her. She is a member of the National Geographic Society. Every line is full of trolling. People who are Bengali will enjoy this more. But listen to this, because in the next paragraph he goes even harder into the trolling. Okay, so he's saying, Biplab is saying, even Americans know her. She is a member of the National Geographic Society. Okay, now Holly wanted to say that anyone who subscribed to the National Geographic magazine was called a member, but she held her tongue. Nevertheless, the woman in the sari would maintain a cold distance throughout Holly's stay in the city. She did not really meddle or mingle with Holly that much. And as you know, Biplab is saying, I was a journalist, but I'm currently editing a book on the dialectic materialism embedded in the works of 19th century poet Michael Madhusudhan Datta, whose biography was, by the way, ordered by Savarkar when he was in prison. With that, Biplab sat down. Holly noticed that he had left out the small, mousy man at the end of the table, okay? Someone went ignored. She would later learn that he was Shubho Moitro, a clerk in the weights and measures department and a camp follower, meaning he is in the same ideological camp with these people. He was a bit younger, perhaps in his early 50s, and held others in awe. The rest did not quite treat him as an equal and made fun of him behind his back. That is the casteism mysterious sociologist is talking about, okay? This is Bengal Castism. The rest did not quite treat him as an equal and made fun of him behind his back, sometimes even to his face. Shubho tolerated this without complaint, because he, of course, had much respect for these people. Holly found that he attended all meetings religiously and read all articles, columns, and poems written by the others in that group. Indeed, he seemed to live in order to be a part of the group. So he has sort of fanboyism for the rest of the group here. So you are from America. Where in America? I'm with the University of New Haven. I both teach and conduct research there. I have been to America twice. Once in 1989 to present a paper on post-colonial linguistic resonance at the University of East Texas. And then in 1995 to attend a conference organized by my friend Savitri Biwak. This is very, very insane trolling going on. First of all, there is a Gayatri Di, and now there is a Savitri Biwak. Let's read this paragraph once again. So, again, a trolling for Gayatri Spivak. I have been to America twice, once in 1989 to present a paper on post-colonial linguistic resonance at the University of East Texas, and then in 1995 to attend a conference organized by my friend Savitri Biwak. Do you know her? Holly says, I'm afraid not. The US is a big place. And then Biplab says, big houses, big cars, but no culture, no soul. Like people go on even today that Kolkata, everything, baki sab chodo. Kolkata has soul. Soul. The soul that makes you join Trinamool Congress and become a gunda for them. That's soul. So then someone else says, I have never been to America, but I have been to Britain. I went with an MLA delegation to attend a human rights workshop. I have been to Dubai many times. So what brings you to Kolkata? I am doing some research on Indian intellectual life and was told to come here. An Indian colleague connected me to Biplab. This is Holly saying. Now, you have come to the right place. We are not money-minded like the Gujaratis and Marwadis. Even if Kolkata has fallen behind a little in economic terms, this is still the intellectual and cultural capital of India. What Bengal thinks today, India thinks tomorrow. End quote. In the course of the next hour and a half, now this is one of the most trolly paragraphs ever, okay? Listen to this now. Okay. In the course of the next hour and a half, over more cups of tea, the conversation took many twists and turns. A detailed comparison of Obama's position in Afghanistan versus Nixon's position in Vietnam, and the 19th century British experience with the Afghan wars. From a dissection of Trump's options in the Korean Peninsula to the emerging trends in Kolkata's student politics. It then turned to an animated discussion on the general deterioration in cinematic standards due to the commercial influence of Bollywood. There was a general consensus that black and white European art films of the 50s represented the pinnacle of lensmanship, meaning camera work. Although, of course, there was the genius of Ray. कितना चीज ट्रोल कर दिया एक पैराग्राफ में. I love this paragraph. I have read this story to so many of my friends. From a dissection of Trump's options in the Korean Peninsula to the emerging trends in Kolkata student politics, it then turned to an animated discussion on the general deterioration in cinematic standards due to the commercial influence of Bollywood. Bollywood नहीं होता तब हम बड़े world class film बना लेते, okay? There was a general consensus that black and white European art films of the 50s represented the pinnacle of lensmanship, although of course there was the genius of Ray. Furious debate raged on the relative abilities of erstwhile cricketing captains Mahendra Singh Dhoni, Saurav Ganguly, Lala Amarnath, Tiger Pataudi, before it turned to the relative merits of the Latin American and European styles of playing football and whether or not Federer is really the greatest tennis player of all time. Statistics and counter-statistics were thrown about. Holly was impressed by the learned discussion, but would have been even more so if she had known that none of the participants had ever actually played cricket, tennis or football. Now, next quote from one of these intellectuals that all this T20 cricket is not really cricket. It is entertainment. It does not show the true art, only money making. Totally agree. Don't know why there is such a fuss over Kohli. Wouldn't have lasted long against the West Indies bowling attack of the 1970s. Totally failed. I was in Eden all 5 days during the test of December 1978 when Gavaskar scored 107 before being caught by Bacchus of Phillip in the first innings. He then went on to score 182 not out in the second. The crowds used to understand test cricket in those days, not like now. They just want a spectacle. You see, this is why I really have large disagreements in terms of avoiding cliches. Even when I hear baseless criticisms of America and capitalism, even from Hindutwadis, because you all don't know how much Bengali commie vibes you all give me. Shubho listened intently to the conversation and jotted down the significant observations in a small notebook. Shubho, okay? Shubho Moitro, the sort of the insignificant person. He occasionally ventured a comment but was mostly ignored. Even if he tried to make a comment, no one was listening to him. Holly stayed in Kolkata for several more weeks and met the group many times. They initially met at the coffee house, but the American academic, tired of the place and the oily snacks, and managed to convince the others to have their gatherings at bars and cafes in and around Park Street. Now here, there's a twist. They don't want to go to those elitist cafes, okay? Because those are capitalist things. The intellectuals were somewhat reluctant to shift on the principle that these places were elitist. Okay? Another twist. But they readily agreed when Holly made it clear that she would pay all the bills. Eventually, she invited them to Kolkata Club, a centrally located colonial-era club that she could access through a reciprocal arrangement. And this is the Kolkata Club where the debate between J. Sai Deepak and Anand Ranganathan happened. It was while sipping Mokaibari tea in the Kolkata Club veranda that Holly told the others that her university was organizing a conference on the post-colonial literary theory and was inviting papers from leading experts. They would be very pleased to accept a submission from India. Surojit Da is the obvious person to do this, someone is saying, okay? He would have been head of department if the government had not changed. Arey bhai, Surojit Da would have been sports minister if the government had not changed. Surojit Da would have been head of English literature department if the government had not changed. Imagine, observe what Sanjeev Sanyal is insinuating here. And I'll tell you, the mysterious sociologist who has basically said these things, right? He has not read these books, okay? He does not have the time to read anything other than his sociology books. But see how much Sanjeev Sanyal is corroborating what we were saying. Dr. Surojit Haldar smiled nonchalantly. He said, I am very busy these days, but I will see what I can do to help you with this. Now Holly is saying, that would be wonderful. We will pay for all travel expenses, of course, and make arrangements for your stay in New Haven for the duration of the conference. The only hitch is that the submission date is just 2 months away. I had submitted a paper to Professor Daniel Nelson of Harvard in 1997 for his quarterly journal. He had replied to me that they would get back after carefully examining the paper. I will show you the letter. But they have still not got back. Probably the fellow is still trying to understand the section where I had validated my thesis on Derrida. Anyway, I will not wait for Harvard any longer and will send you an updated version. Holly says, please send it to us, and I'm sure the conference organizers would love to hear you speak about it. I also want to submit a paper. Everyone turned to look at Shubho. This was possibly the first time ever that he was enjoying the full attention of the group. Out of the blue, the insignificant Shubho Moitro ends up saying, I also want to submit a paper. After a short silence, Shubhojit smiled patronizingly. Okay, that's Shubhojit Haldar. Yes, Shubho, you must. Holly returned to New Haven a few days later. 7 weeks later, she received 2 papers in her inbox. One, a formal deconstruction of Tagore's narratives within an alter-Derridian epistemological Darstellung by Dr. Surojit Haldar, and a multi-step teleological examination of subaltern literary heuristics in post-colonial Bengal by Shubhojit Moitro. A couple of weeks later, the office of Professor Holly Katz sent out an airline ticket and a formal invitation letter to Mr. Shubhojit Moitro, requesting him to present his paper at the University of New Haven. A separate letter was sent to Dr. Haldar, thanking him for his submission and assuring him that the paper would be given due consideration for future events. तो पहला ट्विस्ट यहाँ पे आ गया कि शुभोजित हलदार जो कि रेस्पेक्टेड था ग्रुप में, उसका पेपर रिजेक्ट हो गया. बहुत बुरी बात है. Let's see what happens now. Holly personally drove down to Newark Airport to pick up Shubho and made sure he had a comfortable room at the visiting faculty block. The conference was not a large affair, around 35 students and a handful of faculty members. 2 doctoral candidates presented their papers, followed by Shubho. He wore his best suit and a borrowed yellow tie. The audience asked a few polite questions and it was over. Holly made sure he took several photographs of Shubho as he spoke and later a group photograph together with the audience. The following day, Holly drove him back to the airport. On the way, she made a detour to show him Manhattan. Shubho was very pleased and thanked the professor profusely. The chapter ends. A new subchapter says, this is the last chapter, basically last subchapter of the book. A few months later, a yellow ambassador taxi rattled to a halt by the side of the crowded street. The taxi driver quoted an inflated fare, but Holly handed him the correct amount and got off before the driver could argue. One of the bookstall owners gave her a nod of recognition as she confidently made her way to the coffee house. So she is basically back at College Street, Kolkata. She found her group of intellectuals in deep discussion at their usual table. The same people were there, but their seating arrangement had changed. Shubho now sat on the colonial era wooden chair, directly under the portrait of the great poet. The others were listening intently as he made a strong case for the regulation of soap advertising. Okay, now the discussion is about how to regulate soap advertising, because there are topless models kind of being shown, but it might have some bad influences in the society, those sorts of things. When he looked up and saw Holly make her way across the hall, he gave her a benevolent smile. No more than a year had passed when the following article appeared in the Quarterly Journal of Social Anthropology. Now listen to what article was written by Holly. A study of intellectual hierarchies in stagnation. Listen to this. This is, of course, basically Sanjeev Sanyal writing this, right? What is his topic? A study of intellectual hierarchies in stagnation. How do hierarchies of academia occur when there is a stagnation in society? That is the topic. Author, Professor Holly Katz, University of New Haven. The author would like to thank the John and Sally Depp Foundation for their generous funding of this project. She is also grateful to the faculty and students of the School of Social Anthropology for organizing the mock conference that was critical for the study. Now, here's a big twist in the story. The conference was a mock conference, probably the one where Shubho Moitra went to. Okay, now listen to the abstract of the paper by Holly Katz. This is a study of group dynamics in the context of intellectual stagnation. Given the overall context of stagnation, the hierarchy within the group can remain frozen for very long periods of time. However, in a controlled experiment, we found that group dynamics can still be manipulated through external stimulus. This is possible because the incumbent hierarchy is itself based on claims of external validation, since prolonged stagnation precludes internal validation. Listen to this insane sentence once again, okay? Holly Katz is saying she has found out in her research that in a stagnated situation, given the overall context of stagnation, the hierarchy within the group can remain also stagnated, but that stagnation can change when some external stimulus is added, like what Holly did to this group, a fake conference. Okay, now why is that? Why is the fake conference being able to alter the hierarchy inside the stagnated academic hierarchy? Because the validation for that academic group came from external objects anyway. Okay, they were saying that even Americans know her. That is the point here. So this is possible because the incumbent hierarchy is itself based on claims of external validation. कि बाहर के यूनिवर्सिटी से मेरा डिग्री है कि नहीं, या फिर things like that do I have a degree from College Street Kolkata Presidency College or not? Claims of external validation, since prolonged stagnation precludes internal validation. Thus, changing the relative claims of external validation, so when you change the metrics of the external validation, you take Shubho Moitra away to USA for a conference, that can radically overturn the hierarchy of such a group of intellectuals. The paper contains the full record of the experiment conducted over 2017 to 2018, but the names of mentioned individuals have been deliberately changed in order to protect their identities. What a phenomenal story.
जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनी